Okay, my name's Nathan. I've been programming games since like Commodore 64 days. Somehow I've ended up doing business software for about the last 15 years. And so I'm trying to get out of the business software and get full on into games now, in between jobs looking for work. So I've been doing a lot of Unity stuff, as I've talked about before, using Daikon Forge GUI and a thing called Artisy Draft, if anybody's ever heard of that. I might do a talk about that another day. The other thing I've been spending my time on is Project Spark. I don't know why it's doing an update when it's got no network. Project Spark, I was in the closed beta for this. It's in open beta at the moment. And one of the things it doesn't have is a volume control. Yeah, no sound options, it's silly. I'm showing it on the Xbox because I think it's a very cool idea of being able to develop a full game using just a controller. I tend to plug keyboard in just because the on-screen keyboard's a pain. But you can also get it on Windows 8.1, 8.1 only. It won't run on 8. I don't know what they did in 8.1 that made it required. But it's there, it's free, go download it. There's a stack of stuff I could show you in here. It's kind of a game development kit, I guess would be the best way to describe it. It's got a code, it's got a language in there, but most of the models and things that you're working with are all predefined and you have to purchase additional content, some of which you can get free. So what I'm going to do, is we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to jump straight into the code and sort of show you from the inside out, I guess, just to give you an idea how quick and easy it is to make stuff when you've got a lot of these predefined objects and so forth. It's a little bit like Unity in a way, or the ideas are sort of very similar, that you have an object and that object has a brain and the brain defines what the object does. When you get deeper into it, you can do multi-brain stuff as well. So this is a default empty world, a bit of land. It's got no texturing on the land yet. It uses voxels for the terrain, which I'll show in a minute. And we've got one character in here. There's a whole bunch of props. You can see a few of them along the bottom here. Some of the props will have actions built into them, some of them won't. The character is a little bit special in that the characters have animations and a lot of that kind of thing built into them as well. So you can see that guy's doing an idle animation already without doing anything at all. So I'm going to go into his brain for a start and delete it. He's now brainless, yeah. Okay, and first thing I'm going to do, so this is the code, right? The code is built up of tiles, and the tiles are context sensitive, so it depends what tile you have preceding it as to what options it'll give you and so forth. And every line of code is made up of a when and a do. When this is happening, then do this. So while the when is true, it will continuously execute what's on the when side. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do with this guy is put a camera in. A follow camera, okay, which is basically a third person camera, and I'll test that.
Because you have no when, that means do it all the time?
All the time, yes. And the cameras, normally your camera doesn't really belong in an object, it's kind of somewhere off separately. What happens here is the last camera to be activated will be the one that's active. Generally, you try and make sure that you set your conditions up so that only one camera is active at a time, or it does some weird things. All right, so here's our guy standing there. As I say, he's got idle animations running, and notice there was no code in the brain for the idle animations. That's just built in. The camera allows us to pan around him, and that's pretty much all we've got so far. All right, so now we'll give him a bit more action. So here's an example for movement. Couldn't be any simpler. We say when we use the left stick, do move, and that's it. Test it again. Okay, so we've got movement, he's got acceleration, deceleration, he's got a walking and a running animation, we've got particles on the ground. So you can see with like 2 tiles, we have all the movement and everything set up. And of course, the idea is here, 99% of the time, that's how you're going to want them to work. If you want it to work differently, you can start manually controlling the velocity and all that kind of stuff if you want to. But it makes it very quick and easy to get the basics up and running. So we'll give this guy a little bit more of a brain. So some more controls, we'll say on A, jump. And B can be dodge, say.
You're pretty fast at this, have you had a lot of practice?
Yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time on this. I've been working on one game in particular, which I'll hopefully show you at the end, that I've probably spent about half of the last couple of weeks, like pretty much all day, every day on it.
On the 360 or do you
On the 360, yeah. And that's an interesting thing, is I actually, for some reason, prefer to do it on the 360. Often I'll find myself sitting at my desk with the PC, coding on the Xbox, using the PC to look up things, using chatting with other people and searching on Google and things like that. So X, whoops. Let's give them attack. You do learn where the things are after a while, but they're fairly well organised. They shift around a little bit sometimes. And Y will do shoot.
Is this all visual, or do you do any traditional coding as well?
There is no keyboard typing coding. The only place you would have to type things is if you did, for instance, say if we go say, then we want them to say something and it gives us the on-screen keyboard. So this is where I plug a keyboard in and use it for these bits. You do have variables, so you're typing variable names, naming your pages, things like that. But there is no actual code. This is what they call this code with a K, which actually comes from, there was a thing on the Xbox 360 in the community stuff called Kodu Game Lab, K-O-D-U, it was spelled. This is kind of the spiritual successor to that. So the name code is, I think, a hangover from that time. All right, so we've got this guy jumping, dodging, attacking, shooting. All right, so we've got a jump. And do we have a double jump? No, we didn't get double jump. And there's the dodge. Attacking. He has 3 levels of attacks as well. I think that's a small one. It goes, small, medium, large. And shoot. And this is what you're seeing there with what he's shooting is just like the default for this character is to shoot a fireball. Why, I don't know. Something else you'll notice, if I hold down Y, he'll just keep shooting. All right, and this is where you start to get what they call modifiers on the code. So for our shoot, for instance, we have Y, and we could say we only want that to happen when it's pressed. And so that makes it happen once each time you press it, rather than continually executing that line while it's pressed down. So the modifiers are kind of like function parameters, basically. Some of the more complex ones, you'll get 2 or 3 modifiers, and sometimes you'll have to put a modifier followed by a value, then another modifier followed by a value, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's, a basic character right there. Not doing very much, he's got movement and so forth. I'll go back to the basic adventurer brain. Now there's galleries of all of these items. There's galleries of brains, of props, of characters. At the moment there is no real way to get your own content in there. except for it does support Connect for creating emotes. So you can, say, I want to do an emote, record it from the Connect, you do your action, and then it'll play it back on the character. A lot of people are using primitives. There's a big argument going on at the moment as to whether they should add more primitives in here, because you can link or glue objects together, and so you can build stuff, out of the pieces. Brain gallery. So he's a third-person adventurer. Okay, so this is the default brain that this guy had. You can see very, very similar to what I just put in there. They've got pressed on the attack and the jump. And it's setting a team at the top. You can see the once here, which is saying it's only going to run that once the first time this brain activates, and then never run it again. We've got a meter on there for health. And this part down here is interesting. We start detecting objects in front of us, highlighting them. You can see it's checking for keyboard. It also supports touch. It will work on a tablet quite nicely. And so it's using some logic there to go, if there's something in front of us that we can interact with, when we press B, we're going to interact with that object, but if there's nothing there, when you press B, it'll do a dodge. That's essentially what that's all doing. Yes, it is indented, correct. So you can see here's the when here. So when we detect objects, we're doing all of this stuff underneath, and you can basically just grab these and move them in. Usually.
How do you copy and paste in that?
Copy and paste is done with triggers. You can copy a single object. It's copy with the left trigger, paste with the right trigger. So I can copy a single item like that, or you can copy a whole line and paste it as well. You can also go into here and copy the entire page and go and paste that into another brain. Or of course, if you've got a brain you want to use in multiple places, you can save the brain to the gallery, and then you can just load that brain in at startup. You also have object templates. So one of the properties of an object is to say it's a template, which will make it invisible. So you can use those to store brains in that you're going to load up into other objects and things. Sorry? Oh, okay, wow. Okay, so let me just quickly show you how that interact works. Here's the gallery of props. They're all following sort of an adventuring style. They're going to put some space stuff in here shortly. And as I said, a lot of these props will have stuff built into them. So let's just go, I think the bird egg has interactable.
You're saying you can't get your own content in there, but I don't know about it later on?
Don't know. At the moment, like, you'll get a certain amount at the start. It has a leveling system built into it. So as you are editing your games and doing things, you actually earn experience. And when you level up, or you do challenges and so forth, which earn coins, and the coins can be used to buy more props. They've got two types of money. There's one you can earn from doing the challenges. There's another one you have to pay for. And they have a premium thing, which gives you like double on all the challenges. So there's an egg, and you can see as I walk up to it, the bee appears, and when I use it, it's going to hatch and fly away. All right. So yeah, billions of objects in there. There is a lot of stuff you can do. It seems limiting because you're only working with their content, but when you start attaching things together and stuff, it's quite amazing what you can create. I saw a Star Wars one that I was playing around with this morning that had a full model of R2-D2 and C-3PO. The R2-D2 one was very impressive. I can't figure out how they made it. So terrain, very quickly, we've got a bunch of different tools for the terrain. It is voxels. So we can...
Height map?
Sorry?
You sure it's not height map, it's actual voxel?
It is voxels, yes.
So you can get underneath stuff.
Well, you can see here how many voxels we're using. Connect storage, music and sound in the objects. Okay, so, oops. Oh, that's on There we go. Okay, so that's expand and erode, of course. There's tools for digging tunnels, cutting out. You can roughen and smooth and so forth. And then there's this cubify tool, which basically shows you the voxels. I quite like what they've done with the smoothing of the voxels. You can actually get some quite nice terrain. There's a limit, of course, to how many voxels you can put into the world. They're going to have level linking soon, so that when you fill up this one, you can basically go through a portal and load another level and just go on forever. Then we have painting for the terrain. You can see down the bottom here, you can set up slots for various biomes. This is the main woodland biome, so if I paint just with this, it does a lot more than just painting a texture. It's putting clutter in there and so forth as well. And it blends the edges and does all sorts of nice things. So that's...
The sphere or something? So
yes, we have scale, and you also have the shape, square, cylinder, and the intensity at the end there. Right, so if we can just draw a huge big chunk. Okay, so that's drawing with just a plain texture, and there's a few different ones there for the woodland stuff. It's snow. That's a path or dirt texture. But then we also have entire biomes set up. So here's the nature biome. This works with the textures for the landscape and so forth, as well as the props, and tries to do the whole lot for you in one step. So if we draw, it'll create trees, it'll create creatures. Usually you get a few squirrels and things in here. Rocks. Now you can notice that these rocks that are coming in, and the trees as well, they have some of these little objects that are hanging at the top of them. These are logic cubes. That is something you usually use for something you want to be non-visible. So what it's putting in here are not just props, but they're assemblies, which are, you know, combinations of a whole bunch of things with a brain and so forth in them as well. Some of the trees, I don't know if we can see one here, sometimes they have particles for leaves falling and so forth. And I also have, oh, that's a river. There is a desert biome as well. Oh, there you go. You can see it's thrown a squirrel in there as well. Okay. One thing I'll mention, the difference between the Xbox and using this on a PC, there's not a huge difference, but one thing I've noticed is about how you can create terrain. And this is one reason that I actually went to PC to do something that I was doing. On the Xbox, you can use X and Y to go up and down, so I can just start drawing terrain. If I go to add, I can just start drawing terrain in the middle of nowhere. You can notice it's clever with the textures as well. It knows based on slope and so forth, you know, this is underneath, so it has moss hanging off of it. If you do a steep mountain, it won't put grass up on the steep parts and things like that. There's about 3 or 4 different textures in there. So on the Xbox, you can move up and down like this. When you're on the PC with the mouse and you move around, it will follow the terrain. So it's very good for building onto the terrain, but it's no good. You can't get the cursor up into the middle of nowhere and just start drawing.
Can you use the controller on the PC?
Yes, but only if you plug it in.
Well, yeah. Do you mean as in?
You can't use wirelessly. There's no wireless dongle for the 360 controllers. But Microsoft.
Would it work with the one controller you mean?
Yes.
Yes, you said 360.
Did I? Sorry.
But if you had a 360 controller that was wireless, could you use it?
360 controller? I don't know.
Okay.
Don't know. I haven't tried it. I did have a wireless dongle for the 360 controller for PC, but it stopped working.
And does it work? And if you're
using it on the PC with the controller, does it do the same things on the Xbox?
That I don't know. I haven't tried.
Okay.
So one of the things, so if you want to put a piece of land in the middle of nowhere on the PC, you have to create a plane at the point that you want to start drawing, and then the mouse will lock to that plane and you can start drawing there, which is very nice for creating, you know, like smooth, if you want to create a smooth slope with a controller, it's almost impossible because you sort of have to go like this, which ends up with a sort of a stepping, whereas you could just create a plane at that angle and just draw on the plane and it would all come out on the nice. It's got smoothing tools and all things like that as well. All right.
You got the keys one we created earlier?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, do you want me to show you one that I've been working on very quickly? Don't want to save that. It has cloud saves as well. You know, it's got voting, so you can vote up other people's worlds and all that kind of thing. Not working particularly well at the moment, that side of it.
How long has this been out for?
Quite a while now. I knew about it well before it actually came out, so you know, that was probably like a year ago or something when they first announced it. But yeah, they did a big show off of it at E3. So this game that I'm making is, you know, building resource management, town builder type of thing. It's still in its early stages. This is, like I say, probably about a week's worth of work. I'm creating all the trees and so forth randomly myself, manually, at startup because I want to have a certain amount and so forth in there. So we can basically chop a tree. You notice he's equipping the tool automatically as soon as you start working with that. I've got resources over on the right hand side there. Every once in a while it'll throw one out at me and it catches it. And we can do the same with the rocks. That's my version of a pickaxe, which is basically a couple of arrows with a club. And we've got a build menu here, so storehouse is the first building. So the idea is you can put the storehouse, set up workers, the workers will take the stuff back to the storehouse. Storehouse also determines what your maximum resources are. I've got this on like a cheat mode at the moment, so it's not costing me any resources to build anything. Here's a house, you see, so I can move this around, I can rotate it. This is all my code doing that. Even the frame itself is actually, there's just one prop there, and I, at runtime, actually calculate where to position those things so that it's dynamic. So we've got a house, we can hire a worker, there he is. And
it's easier to do something complex with KO code or whatever than it is to just type it.
It depends on what you're trying to do. I think the difficulty with this at the moment is trying to make it perfect. It's very difficult to make something exactly as you want it, but if you treat it more like prototyping, it's very, very quick and easy to get something done. You know, as is always the case with these things that give you a lot of the tools.
So like that scaffolding that you said you just manufactured out of a plank or whatever.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine trying to express that with little lines of.
It's yeah, it's not as hard as
like
not as hard as you think. You have vectors in there, so you've got a lot of vector math and things like that. You know, that's what's going on with that mostly. So this guy, I can tell him to follow me. Here's a good example of like limitations of it. I'm showing an icon here and I've got another one slapped over top of it, but if it goes off to the side it tends to offset it and you can see stuff in behind it. It's because they don't have enough icons and things like that. And it's like, you've just got to go, well, that'll do for now. I'll tidy it up later, you know. So yeah, so if I set him to follow mode, he'll follow me. And let's go over here, make a field. One of the interesting things with the field, you can modify the terrain at runtime as well. You can add terrain, you can paint it, all of that kind of thing. So what I've done with the field is I've painted the ground with a dirt texture, and plants are growing. And we can tell this guy to start harvesting food, and he'll run over there and start. and take it back to the storehouse and drop it off. And it'll keep going forever. That's about as much as I've got at the moment. The next thing I want to do is some sort of obstacle avoidance or pathfinding, because if I put that over here, he'll just walk against that fence and keep running like an idiot. But the idea is there. I'm pretty pleased with how it's gone so far. A lot of the text and stuff you can see, this is health of the item. I've got him showing what current job he's doing and that kind of thing.
How do you drop into the page view from there? Like, what are the keys and how long is that instructs all that stuff?
Okay, so start button gets you between, well, I don't think they call it start anymore, the one with the little lines on it. We'll just switch between edit and test mode. And you can see in this world, I've got the character and I've got a whole bunch of templates here that I create from at runtime. One of the interesting ones is these little light bulbs are actually the jobs for the worker. So the worker by default doesn't know how to do anything. And when you give him a job, I load up a brain into him that has that correct job in it, and he starts doing it. When you change the job, it deletes the old brain, gives him a new one. The code for creating the platform is in this one, I believe. Is that my builder? Yep, so I've got a lot of pages here. You can see this is the displaying the menus and things like that. We've got multiple pages. That shows the time it's going to take to build. This shows the build effect, the particles and so forth. So there's 3 pages in there. I think there's another brain that I use elsewhere as well. I don't see the scaffolding code there.
Is there a notion of use also for other people's games? You mentioned R2D2, you couldn't figure out how it's done.
Yes, they have what they call remixing. So when you download someone else's project, you can go remix this and basically create your own project using theirs as a base and get into the code and do whatever you like.
So you could look through that guy's pages and actually...
Yes, you could, definitely. All right, so that's Project Spark in a nutshell.
Afterwards, if you've got more questions, then you have a bit of a look.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Yep.
How about Control S for save and Control Z for undo when you're editing?
Yeah, on PC it does. On Xbox, I don't know. I haven't tried that.
So is it saving when you switch modes to test modes?
It doesn't auto-save. They actually just fixed that recently. It used to create new autosaves every time. And you end up with this lineage that you see across the bottom here. So here, this is the autosave here.
That's your version of Control.
Exactly, yes. And you can do manual saves as well. The undo actually, I don't know if you saw across the bottom, there's a little strip. And everything you do adds a step to that, and you can literally just hold a button and sort of scrub back and forth through the undo.
Yeah, just as important as being able to create so easily to
Yeah.
get apart. How about that recording steps for gameplay? Is that somehow in a piano roll where you can...
Steps for gameplay.
You're playing the game, can you record that like a macro and play it back from Machinima or make videos out of your own game?
I can't say I've seen anything like that. Because everything's physics-based, you know, it doesn't, if you code it so that it's physics-based in terms of the movement and so forth, you can't then, there's no way to play it back in such a way that it's using the values that it had originally.
Right.
You know what I mean? It is what it is. It's a physics-based thing.